Now, of all of the different isms that we talk about and that we are told are bad for our country, there is one ism that I will absolutely underline is bad for our country, and it is the one that I believe does the most damage compared to all of the other isms that we keep being told about. Racism, all the rest of it. Racism, sexism. I think ageism is the biggest problem that actually people suffer from in Australia. Doesn't mean the other isms don't exist, but ageism is the biggest issue. You know, and I know, once you're over a certain age, most companies that you work for will slowly transition you out because you're too old school for them. If you apply for jobs and you're older, it is even harder to get those jobs, which is why things like JobKeeper was so important, that we didn't have millions of people over the age of 40 go on to the unemployment queue. It's one of the great things the Prime Minister and the Treasurer did in saving those jobs and saving us from the issues of ageism. But the ultimate ageism is, as you know, the horrible conditions that way too many people suffer in aged care in this country. Yet another report, the Royal Commission report, was released today. The Prime Minister said this about the latest report.
The fact that Australians feel they are waiting out their life, it's impossible to put into words how you respond to that.
I agree completely. Think about the aged care system where the most number of people in aged care in Victoria, the biggest provider is the state government. There's also state government-run facilities in every other place. But in terms of those private-run facilities, while they make billions of dollars, you have to sell your house. There is very little that is left over from your house, no matter how short a period of time you spend in aged care. And even after you have sold the family home, given these institutions probably close to or over $1 million, there is still endless physical abuse, sexual abuse, let alone the horrible conditions and things that so-called count as food. I had to go to war, and I mean literally, with the aged care providers of New South Wales to make sure that sprinklers would become mandatory in every single existing, not new, existing aged care facility after the fire that killed so many people in Quakers Hill about 10 years ago. Remember that? When people literally died in their beds? We had to go to war with the organisations who told us this is going to cost too much money. Money always wins. People always lose. It's a message the Prime Minister talked about today, this report talks about, and Labor talked about today.
What I heard from Scott Morrison today didn't give me, honestly, a lot of hope about this. I think he's said all the right things about it, but remember, this is the person that cut funding to the sector and then turned around surprised when standards slipped.
So immediately we're into the politics, which means the ism that is the problem, the ism that means we won't talk about this problem consistently for longer than this conversation tonight, the front page tomorrow, maybe it'll extend for a couple of days. But there will be media outlets that will spend more time on Lady Gaga's missing puppies than what is happening to older people in Australia. Older people in aged care, older people in the workforce, older people who live by themselves. They just don't care. That is ageism. When people are left behind by our political system, left behind by our cultural system, left behind by our media system, that's ageism. That's the ism that I say is the most dangerous in the country. And the report proves that because of ageism, because too many people don't care, too many bad things have been building up for too long. Jonathan Lee explains what's in this report.
The government now says it will implement a plan to achieve once-in-a-generation change to reshape the health, lives and attitudes towards older Australians. The report calling for a new Aged Care Act and Inspector General and an urgent review of care standards, oral health, medicine and wounds. It also asks the government to clear the 100,000 Australians currently on the home care package waiting list and implement a new care-at-home subsidised government service.
Now, it's a lot of information. It's not as exciting as talking about what's happened to Lady Gaga's puppies, but it matters. It matters way more than who won Golden Globes. It matters way more about what's going to happen at the footy and footy tipping comps, but we just won't talk about it. And proof of how you can be told the reality of what's happening in aged care but very little changes. This is the 18th report that has been done into the aged care sector in the past 20-something years. Here's just some of the reports. Some are done by the Productivity Commission, some are done by the Senate, some are done by the House of Representatives, some are a judicial inquiry, some are the Royal Commission. But because this is not a big enough political issue, because not enough people are willing to march in the streets to talk about it, it plays 28th fiddle to stuff that doesn't matter at all, or stuff that is, frankly, from a media perspective, more salacious, more interesting. Things that become sharper focuses that you can dominate a question time about, like we have for the past 2 weeks. Now, I applaud anyone who has access to a microphone or has the capacity for power. Use it to talk about something that might be a little boring for some people. Yes, that might bore people enough that they might just turn off. But the oldest people who do not have a voice, who we all feel so terribly about tonight but will not give a stuff about by this time next week, deserve people to talk about it. We will continue to do so. We will make sure that we get the right people on and we work out what's going to happen here, but you know and I know there'll be another one of these reports, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. And I don't know why we can't fix this issue. It's big, it's complicated, it costs money. Even the 2 people who were in charge of the Royal Commission couldn't agree on how to pay for it. One said that it should cost you more money in user pays. The other says it should cost the government more money, which of course means higher spending, higher debts, or higher taxes. There's no easy way out of it. And sadly, there are too many companies who sit on piles of money while the person you love may end up literally having piles in the bed because they are not being cared for properly.